Ever since the Switch launched, I always wanted Gamecube Joycons. I thought they would be the most awesome thing in the world. Well, today that dream has finally become a reality. Well, mostly. Introducing the Nixie Wizard. Now this video was sponsored by Nixie, so I want to make that perfectly clear. However, I did tell them that I would only make a video if I liked the controller, and I would be brutally honest in my review. They agreed to those terms, which makes them pretty awesome. So, here we go. Let's talk about the general feel and comfort. Okay, so let's talk about the general feel of the controller. Overall, like the plastic that it's made from, it's like in between like high quality and low quality. I would say it's just kind of standard. I definitely didn't expect it to feel like the most premium plastic known to man, like you'd find on a real GameCube controller. But I also didn't expect it to feel as hollow as it does. It does have like a hollow feel to it. After using them for a while, I think they purposely chose to make the controller more hollow so that it's easier to hold in portable mode. They are quite light compared to what I typically would expect. The grip is actually extremely comfortable. It's not as comfortable as a normal GameCube controller because that controller is the most comfortable controller to ever exist, but it's definitely not too far behind. If I had to use like a scale of, the most comfortable controllers known to man, I'd probably put like Xbox One at like 10 out of 10, like perfect. Then I'd put GameCube at like 9.5. I would put this probably at like an 8.5 in terms of comfort if we're comparing it to the best of the best. So it is fairly comfortable, but obviously it's not the greatest thing ever. But if we're gonna compare it to Joy-Cons, you'll be holding these for hours and hours and hours, right? I think you're gonna have a lot more comfort holding your Switch for long periods of time than this, like 100%. This allows the weight to be more evenly distributed on the back of my hand. I'm able to hold it like a real controller. So the Switch by default already feels lighter, and I don't have to like rest my fingers like far into the Switch like I would normally with Joy-Cons. So it definitely does make using the Switch a lot more comfortable. All right, let's talk about how the buttons feel because that is extremely important. Personally, the buttons definitely feel like a very big upgrade when it comes to the normal Joy-Cons. When you're pressing these kind of feel like, well, I don't know, buttons that you'd find on the Nintendo DS, which isn't the worst thing ever, but these here on the Nixie actually feel like controller buttons. They have a lot more travel to them. When you press them, it feels a lot more satisfying. There's a lot of buttons on this controller. So first of all, I want to bring your attention to this T button here, which is on both of them. These are turbo buttons. They also come with a button on the back, which is a programmable button. So if you wanted to, you could use this button right here, which is a gear icon, to program what you want the back pedal to do. You could program it to like roll left. So instead of having to press shield and then input to the left or right to roll, you could map it so that I press one single button here on the back pedal and Mario would instantly just roll to the left or the right. I'm not entirely sure what kind of useful things you could do with it on, Smash, but I'm sure there's plenty of very useful applications that, a lot of people could think of for all kinds of games. The analog sticks are kind of like Xbox One analog sticks. They're called concave. So it means that they dent inward. So your thumb rests very gently on it. I personally love these kinds of joysticks more than any other kinds of joysticks. In fact, that's the main reason why I don't really like the PlayStation controllers, at least the older ones, because it doesn't allow for a really solid grip. The triggers are probably my least favorite part of this controller. They're very, very light travel and clicky. So if I press R here, can you hear that? It's a very, very light click. It kind of reminds me of like, I don't know, like the DS LNR buttons. I'm gonna go ahead and press this one. Yeah, I kind of prefer the one on the vanilla Joy-Cons a little bit more. It definitely feels a lot more satisfying to press than this one. But it is extremely responsive, which, you know, at the end of the day, that's what matters the most. And controllers are all preference, right? Some people really do like super clicky, super tactile, super light travel. People literally spend hundreds of dollars to get their keys on their keyboard to be like that. So that's just something I personally don't like, but I'm sure somebody out there would really like that. If we're gonna use ZR as well, it's a similar story. Based on how the button looks, you would think there'd be a lot of travel, right? It looks like I'd be able to press it really far down, but I can't. It's just a very light press, and same thing, it puts my shield up instantly. It's extremely responsive, but it's just not my preferred way I'd like my buttons to feel. I watched a few reviews of this controller after using it for a while just to see what, you know, other people's opinions were. And a lot of people were complaining about these face buttons. They said they felt like, you know, kind of mushy and less responsive. I personally think they feel very responsive. I love the way that they feel, and I would use these buttons 10,000 times over the vanilla Joy-Cons any day of the week, 100%. The vibration motor in these things definitely leaves a little bit to be desired. It feels kind of like an old school rumble. Kind of reminds me of like the rumble and like the Wii remote. It's more of a lighter rumble. When you're kind of used to the rumble and the Joy-Cons, the rumble in these Joy-Cons is just exquisite. It's top of the line. It's going to be very hard to top the rumble in these, but that's pretty understandable. I also like how the Switch looks when I hold it like this. Like, look how much empty space there is here. I think that's really funny. Like I said, it distributes the weight really good, so I feel like I really could hold this thing for hours and not get tired of it. We really need to talk about the size comparison to other controllers. All right, it's now time for the size comparison to other controllers. So this thing is a lot bigger than you would think it would be. In fact, let me show you. So the most likely comparison we can make is a normal GameCube controller, right? So here is a normal GameCube controller side by side with this thing. Now, this controller might look the exact same, but if I tilt them like this, you can see that there is a significant beefiness that goes on with this bad boy. Like, this thing is significantly more beefy than this one. This one is very thin, and if I'm holding it, I can easily touch my thumbs together like this while I'm holding it, and I have very small hands. If I attempt to do that with this thing, I can't do it, bro. Like, I'm trying, and I'm like overextending. Like, if I'm trying to comfortably do it, it's like going like this. So yeah, it's significantly bigger than the OG GameCube controller, but that's fine. So let me show you the next likely controller that you'd probably compare it to. This is a Switch Pro controller. So once again, the test while I'm holding it, can I comfortably touch the tips of my thumbs? Yeah. So this thing is definitely a lot more compact and smaller. If we compare the top and the bottom like this, as you can see, this thing is a lot wider and beefier. This thing makes the Switch Pro controller look like a little kid. Like, this is crazy difference when it comes to the size and overall thickness of the entire controller. The next controller we're going to compare it to is the PS4 controller. I haven't used this thing in years, but I know a few people who are watching probably have a PS4 controller. Now, the PS4 controller suffers from the same issue I was talking before. Well, it's not, I keep calling it an issue, but it could just be a preference thing for me. But I can't touch the tips of my thumbs while I'm using a PS4 controller. And that's one of the main reasons why I always thought this controller was fairly uncomfortable. I just thought like the nubs were like super thick, and it always made my hands feel slightly uncomfortable because it just felt a little too big. Now, I will say this. Personally, I think this controller, the Nixie, is a lot more comfortable than a PS4 controller. So if you like the PS4 controller, then personally, I think this one is slightly more comfortable. So that's a really good thing. The last size comparison we'll be doing is the Xbox One controller. This thing also makes the Xbox One controller look fairly tiny. So yeah, this is the beefiest controller that I currently own at the moment. I kind of wish I owned a Dreamcast controller. I feel like the Dreamcast controller would actually be a fair comparison to this one, or maybe even the original Xbox controller, but I don't own any of those. Either way, I will say, despite the fact that it is extremely big, it is actually quite comfortable, and I was surprised because I expected it to be slightly uncomfortable when I was comparing the sizes, but no, it really is really comfortable even for someone with very, very small hands. So, after recording those segments, I decided to use the controller for a few days to really understand how I feel about them, because you don't really get to know a controller until you've invested some hours into using them. With a few hours under my belt, I can confidently say that I really enjoy the Nixie Wizard. However, there are a few things that I do not like about it, and I hope that Nixie can make some improvements going forward. I think the shoulder and triggers need some improvement to their feel. I think this is the weakest part of the controller, and if it was addressed, I would love it so much more. I want a more confident press. It needs to feel like it can support a hard press like a champ. I also don't really like the hollowness of the controller. Perhaps this is an advantage for weight distribution and overall long-term comfort, but I generally want a more hefty feel when I use a controller. I also wanted to bring up the D-pad since I didn't get to talk about it earlier. The D-pad is pretty good. I actually prefer it over many other D-pads in competitors. So well done, Nixie. Okay, with everything laid out on the table, would I recommend the Nixie Wizard? Mostly yes. If you want that classic GameCube feel for your Switch, then it really does provide that experience. Does it feel as durable and rock solid as a genuine GameCube controller? No. But I really didn't expect that. Not even the official Joy-Cons feel super solid. If I had to give these a rating, I would give them a B+. They really do check a lot of the boxes and provide a unique experience. They also gave me this cool carrying case for your Switch that holds the massive Joy-Cons, so maybe check this out in their shop too if you want a convenient way to bring them on the go. The link to buy these will be in the description. Use code LINKLIGHT to get 10% off your purchase. Thank you to Nixie for supporting the channel, and thank you to you for watching the video. Have a good one. See ya.